The air at Hamilton Preparatory Academy buzzed with tension. It wasn't unusual, after all, it was a private school known for harboring children of America's elite. But this year, the energy was different. Barron Trump, now 17, had just enrolled. Unlike the quiet kid most of the public remembered, Barron had grown into a tall, poised, and observant young man. He didn't speak unless necessary, but when he did, people listened. Unfortunately, not everyone was thrilled to have the president's son walking the hallways. Especially not a group of entitled rich kids who called themselves the Five. These boys, Cameron, Trey, Logan, Hunter, and Rex, were untouchable. Their fathers were CEOs, senators, and lobbyists. They'd ruled the school with passive-aggressive smirks and veiled threats, and now they had their eyes on a new target. He probably thinks he owns the place, Cameron sneered, watching Barron walk to his locker during first period. That his dad pulled strings to get him in. Logan chuckled. Let's make him feel welcomed. Barron could hear the whispers. They weren't subtle. But he'd been in this position before. All his life, the spotlight chased him, news, gossip blogs, paparazzi. People wanted him to break, to react. But Barron had learned a powerful skill from watching his father, control the narrative or be controlled. Still, that first week was rough. The Five started with petty things, bumping into him accidentally, tripping him in the hallway, leaving anonymous notes in his locker that said things like, "Daddy can't save you here." One morning, Barron arrived to find a copy of the Constitution shredded and taped to his locker with a message scribbled in red marker, "You're not above the law." Students gathered, laughing. Some recorded on their phones. He didn't flinch. Not even a twitch. But inside, Barron was calculating. He wasn't afraid, he was planning. That afternoon, he sat alone in the library, flipping through a thick law journal. His Secret Service detail was discreet, watching from a distance. As he read, a quiet voice interrupted. "You okay?" asked Rachel, a senior known for her sharp mind and even sharper sarcasm. "Saw the locker mess. That was brutal." Barron looked up and smiled faintly. "Yeah, they're amateurs." Rachel raised a brow. "You've got a plan, don't you?" Barron closed the book slowly. "Let's just say, I've been underestimated my whole life. That ends now." During a school assembly, the Five hacked into the projector system and played a humiliating deepfake video showing Barron giving a fake speech filled with absurd, childish statements. It was clearly fake, but the laughter was real. And loud. The principal, embarrassed, apologized, but the damage was done. Except Barron wasn't broken. He stood up, calmly took the mic, and looked over the crowd. "You laugh because you don't understand me. That's okay. But when you choose to bully instead of ask questions, you become the problem. And problems, well, they eventually get solved." The auditorium went dead silent. Something in his voice struck a chord. Even teachers looked shaken. The Five exchanged looks, unsure for the first time. The fight was coming, but it wouldn't be the kind they expected. After the assembly, something shifted in the air at Hamilton Prep. Students weren't sure what just happened. Was it a threat? Promise? Either way, Barron Trump's calm but cutting words haunted the halls. Whispers turned into wide-eyed stares. Even the teachers, most of whom were too intimidated by the parents of the Five to intervene before, started paying attention. But the Five weren't backing off. They were furious. "He thinks he's smarter than us?" Hunter hissed as they huddled near the back of the school that afternoon. "He wants to play games? Let's give him a show." That night, the Five broke into the school gym and trashed a locker room. Spray painting "Privileged Loser" across the wall in red, smashing a mirror, and scattering fake campaign flyers with Barron's face over clown makeup. They even left an empty bullet casing in his locker. It was the last straw. By morning, the school was in lockdown. The Secret Service had been alerted. The principal called an emergency assembly. But when Barron entered the building that morning, flanked by Agent Donovan and another suit, he didn't look worried. He looked ready. In the principal's office, everyone expected him to lash out, file charges, or transfer out. Instead, Barron smiled coolly and said, "I'd like to handle this my way." The principal blinked. "Your way?" Barron nodded. "Just give me 1 week. No more. I'll fix this." Though hesitant, the principal agreed, partly out of respect, partly out of awe. And that's when Barron set his plan in motion. First, he confronted the school system. Using his name and status, he exposed how the administration had failed to protect students from bullying. Backed by real data, student testimonies, and quiet conversations he'd had with dozens of classmates over the last month. He compiled everything into a polished presentation and released it in a student-only video titled, "The Real Power in This School Isn't Wealth. It's Us." The video went viral inside the school in less than 24 hours. Students started posting stories of being harassed by the five over the years. Silent victims found their voices. Rachel helped circulate a petition to the school board. By day 3, 200 signatures had been gathered, demanding accountability, policy change, and formal punishment. Then came the final phase. That Friday, Barron challenged the five publicly, not to a fight, but to a debate. In the school's media room, broadcast live over the school's private YouTube. Topic: leadership, power, and the role of privilege in education. Nobody expected them to accept, but driven by arrogance and probably pressure from their influential parents, they agreed. That afternoon, the entire school watched. Cameron stumbled through his opening remarks, mocking Barron in what he thought was a clever joke. "We're not here to bow to the president's kid," he said smugly. "We're here to keep things real." Barron stepped to the podium, clean-cut, steady, wearing a navy blue suit with no tie. He looked around the room with the confidence of someone who knew how the game was played. "I'm not here to pull rank," he said, voice calm. "I'm here because people like you think fear equals respect. It doesn't. Leadership is earned, not demanded." And with that, he delivered a speech filled with empathy, intelligence, and unshakable strength. He didn't insult them. He didn't need to. He told the truth, and the truth hurt. By the end, students were clapping. Not just polite claps, real applause. Rachel stood from her seat. "Time's up for bullies," she said loudly, and the room erupted. Even the principal, sitting in the back row, cracked a smile. The five had been dismantled. Not by fists, not by threats, but by wisdom, strategy, and something they'd never seen in a Trump before: restraint with impact. But Barron wasn't finished. He had one last move to make. The Monday after the debate, something happened that had never occurred in Hamilton Prep's 100-year history. The five didn't show up to school. No private car pickups. No smug grins. No whispered taunts echoing in the locker room. Just empty desks and a campus brimming with buzz. Rumors flew. Did they get suspended? Did their parents pull them out? No way. Someone said their families are panicking because of what Barron did. The truth? It was all of the above. Behind the scenes, the fallout from Barron's strategy was hitting like a tidal wave. After his viral speech and student-led petition, local media caught wind of what had been brewing at the prestigious academy. Headlines began popping up. President's son exposes elite school's culture of silence. Teen Trump goes toe-to-toe with power and privilege and wins. The five's parents were furious, not at Barron, but at their own sons for getting caught in a public storm. Their lawyers issued damage control statements. Donations to the school were threatened. But the administration, under a microscope, stood its ground for once. In an emergency board meeting, disciplinary action was taken. All five boys were suspended indefinitely, stripped of student council positions, and barred from extracurriculars for the remainder of the semester. Cameron's father, a prominent senator, tried to fight it. He failed. Barron, however, stayed quiet during all of this. He didn't need to gloat. He had done what no one thought he could do: topple a legacy of power without throwing a single punch. But not everyone was satisfied with that ending. 2 days after the suspension, as Barron was leaving the library late in the evening, alone for once, as his detail kept a wide perimeter, he heard something behind him. Footsteps. Then, bam! A shoulder rammed into his side. It was Logan. "Thought you were smart, huh?" he growled. "Thought you'd embarrass us and get away with it?" Barron hit the ground hard, book scattering. But unlike before, he didn't stay down. He stood slowly, brushing himself off, as never leaving Logan. "You want to do this now?" he asked calmly. Logan lunged again. What happened next was quick, but unforgettable. Barron sidestepped the tackle, pivoted like he'd practiced 100 times with Donovan, and hooked Logan's arm mid-swing, twisting it just enough to force him off balance. Logan stumbled, hit the ground, and before he could rise, Barron placed one foot gently but firmly on his back. "Never confuse patience with weakness," he said, voice low but lethal. "You've been bullying kids your whole life because you think you're above consequences. This is your consequence." Footsteps echoed. Agent Donovan was closing in fast. But Barron lifted his foot before anyone else touched Logan. He didn't want to humiliate him. He just wanted him to understand. Donovan helped separate them. Logan, still seething, didn't say a word, but something in his face had changed. There was no more arrogance. No smirk. Just a hollow, stunned look of a boy who realized he wasn't the strongest one in the room anymore. 2 weeks passed since the incident with Logan. Hamilton Prep had changed. The 5 were still suspended. Students walked the halls with a new sense of pride. Teachers started enforcing zero-tolerance rules against bullying, finally backed by real accountability. The school had become less of a playground for the elite and more of a place where students felt they had a voice, thanks to Barron Trump. But Barron? He wasn't basking in any spotlight. He kept to his quiet ways, early library visits, casual lunches with Rachel and a few new friends, and the occasional nod from classmates who once avoided eye contact. There was no arrogance, no "I told you so." Just the same calm, watchful energy that had stunned the school. One afternoon, Rachel found him in the media lab editing a short film on student leadership. He was splicing together interviews, speeches, and scenes from the school debate. "You're turning this into a documentary?" she asked, genuinely impressed. "Not for fame," he replied. "Just something future students can watch and remember what one voice can do." Rachel smiled. "You've changed things, Barron. You realize that, right?" He looked at the screen for a long moment. "I didn't want revenge," he said softly. "I just didn't want the next kid walking into this place to feel alone." Outside the lab, the whispers were no longer mocking. They were admiring. "That's Barron. He's the one who stood up. You know, he never once hit anyone. And still won. Dude's like the real-life Batman, but with Secret Service." But perhaps the biggest surprise came during a special school board assembly held to address the bullying culture. Dozens of parents, administrators, and even a few alumni showed up. Barron was invited to speak, not as the president's son, but as a leader. He stepped up to the podium wearing a dark blazer and a gray turtleneck, a style that somehow made him look older than his 17 years. "I came to the school as a stranger," he began. "I didn't expect people to welcome me. I expected to earn that. What I didn't expect was to be targeted before I ever opened my mouth." The crowd was silent. "But I'm not here to complain. I'm here because we have a chance. A chance to fix something that's been broken for a long time. Power without empathy is just intimidation. And schools should be the first place where we teach that lesson." He paused, his voice calm but resonant. "If we want leaders who think of others before themselves, it starts here." The room erupted in applause. Parents stood. Teachers wiped tears. Even the principal leaned forward, beaming with pride. Later that evening, as Barron left the auditorium, he was approached by the last person he ever expected, Cameron, former leader of the 5. Cameron's eyes were different now. No cockiness. Just honesty. "You proved me wrong," he muttered, hands in his pockets. "I thought you were just some spoiled kid with a name, but you earned every ounce of respect." Barron didn't gloat. He simply extended a hand. Cameron stared at it for a beat, then shook it. "Try being better," Barron said. "That's all any of us can do." 1 month later, Barron Trump sat on a quiet bench in the Rose Garden, watching the sun melt into the horizon. Agent Donovan approached with a small envelope. "Thought you might want to see this." Inside was a printed email from Hamilton Prep. "Congratulations. You've been nominated as student body president by a landslide." Barron smiled. He didn't need power, but now he could use it to help others. From bullied outsider to leader of a movement, Barron had done more than just defend himself. He had redefined what it meant to be a Trump. Not with ego, not with wealth, but with strength, empathy, and unstoppable resolve. Because when bullies picked on Barron Trump, they made the biggest mistake of all.